And welcome, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting of the Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority for Harrisburg to order at 3:01 p.m. So just that close, but ready to roll. We have not a terribly lengthy agenda, but a lot to discuss under each. And so we're going to get underway here. First off, as part of the welcome, I want to welcome in absentia Jimmy Pianka. Jimmy is the new appointee to our board on behalf of the House Democratic Caucus. He has some personal issues that prevented him from being with us today, but he will be an active member going forward. So we're happy now to be at full complement. And quorums should be a little bit easier to attend or maintain. And so we're happy to see that. I also bring apologies on behalf of Kevin, who also had some meeting schedule conflicts that arose that prevent him from being here. So first up is approval of the minutes for our July 8th meeting. They were sent around to you in advance. Are there any comments, corrections?
So moved.
Motion to approve, thank you.
Second.
Second, okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion approved unanimously, minutes approved as submitted. Okay, chair report. It's been a busy week. I had quality time with the mayor and her senior staff on Monday. We had well over an hour of discussions on a broad ranging set of topics. So year-to-date finances, projections through the end of the year, some discussion about work underway for the 27 budget, and discussions about the work on the 5-year plan, and some discussion about vacancies, including 2 of the key administrative posts in the finance office. A little bit of progress, at least on one of those 2, as I understand it. And we also talked about Broad Street Market and the insurance settlement there. And a lot of this we're going to be discussing later in the agenda, so I'm not going to go into any great detail on that. Yesterday, we had a meeting of the LERTA work group. And while we didn't have a consensus direction going forward, we at least made some progress. The school in particular walked a little bit back from a hard no to a, okay, let's chat about a few things going forward. The city does have a draft revision that is circulating. The draft takes what is now largely a uniform percentage over the 10-year availability and steps it down over time for the traditional LERTA, maintains, if I recall, as full rate for disadvantaged neighborhoods. And the school, for its part, wants to split consideration of those in 2. So that's, we've kind of agreed to see if we can do that going forward. That's a little bit extra work for the city solicitor, but if we can get something in place by the end of the year, so we don't have to do a simple renewal, that's good. The other thing that's on the table for the schools, at the school's request, is consideration of a review 5 years in. So the ordinance would essentially remain in effect for 5 years. Anybody enrolled in that 5-year period still gets the entirety of the 10 years. But at the 5-year mark, we have a reconsideration of how it's working. The school's primary issue at this point really is the net effect on school property taxes, and in particular, if you're doing this to promote housing, which in large part it does, what does that mean relative to incoming students versus, so increased workload versus inability to achieve the revenue short term. So that's all under discussion, and we got a note today about getting the next meeting scheduled. So there seems to be some good intent on moving forward and progressing quickly into the fall. We did not get a report back from the county yet where they are on the proposed draft. They were not part of the meeting yesterday. So with that, then we will move into our the rest of our budget, yikes, reading it, first of our agenda. And next up, I'd like to invite Ryan Unger forward to talk about economic development planning. Welcome and good to have you with us again.
Brian, good to see you.
Again, appreciate the opportunity. For those of you who don't know, my name is Ryan Unger, President and CEO of the Harrisburg Regional Chamber, Creative Capital Region Economic Development Corp. We're here to give an update on the coalition and stakeholder group working towards a downtown revitalization plan as the first step into the broader economic development strategy for the city. Grateful for the support of the ICA to help kick that process off. If you remember from previous meetings, providing the funds to enlist initially the support of the Pennsylvania Downtown Center to begin the public stakeholder engagement work, and then drafting of the revitalization plan that we will discuss today, and hopefully we'll see in greater detail in the coming month. I went back and looked to see the last time I was here, I believe we had just kind of like launched some public engagement efforts, and during that time we talked about the online perception survey. We've closed the survey since that, and the final numbers are pretty impressive for the participation and engagement of the community. I think when we ask about like an early emerging theme beyond the ones that I'll discuss today that are kind of like 10 poles of the strategy plan, it should be noted that we don't think apathy is an issue, certainly within our community and within our region. With over 4,000 people participating in the perception survey, it blows away what many other communities have seen with similar sampling areas and communities of similar sizes. You typically, our goal initially was 1,500. I think that's why I came here and gave an update and said, hey, we're at 1,500. I feel comfortable, but we appreciate the support of the city, the school district helped get the word out. I know that the Commonwealth also placed it in employee bulletin, so we had some really good data and information from state workers as well and folks that are working downtown. That update with some of the kind of top line kind of takeaways from that are on the website that we have set up for this work, downtownhbg.com. I encourage you to look at that. It's a place where we are asking people to give us ideas, but also to provide updates on where we're at and what we have done so far. When we kind of look at the strategy, I think we see kind of 5 emerging themes that we pressure tested through some public engagement workshops. And again, your support allowed us to get out in front and set up some of these items. In the final report, we'll list very specifically the amount of hours, the amount of time, the number of people spoken to. And we've heard loud and clear from our conversations with the mayor, city council, and others and our legislators that they want public engagement to be an important part of this process. And to that end, beyond the survey, we have held targeted focus groups around several different areas, about 10 to 15 of those focus groups, and also one-on-one stakeholder interviews to help inform this work as we've gone forward. We also, with the support of our friends at the school district, we're gracious enough to held 6 public workshops throughout the summer around 3 primary topic and subject areas. That included quality of life, which I'll get into a little bit, the business ecosystem and climate and supports that can be provided, and also sense of place. Sense of place was done in partnership with Burke & Edson, landscape architecture firm, who brought kind of like visual storyboards to allow community members to identify. We think this is a great example of shade tree that we'd like to see, or sidewalk design, or public space and signage. Those different types of things that give you the look and the feel of your community. We wanted the community to actually weigh in, see how it fits in. And as part of that, and part of your support, we will be providing schematic designs included in the final revitalization plan of what it could look like. I say that they are concept designs. They are not final engineering. They will involve further engagement and conversations with the city engineer who's been a part of this work and planning and that and such, but it helps kickstart, I think, this kind of reimagining of the city and specifically downtown. The 5 emerging themes that we've identified that are outlined on the website, and we've talked about at length and talked about during the public workshops. I think should be no surprise to this group, but also provide some good statistical validation of where we're at. First and foremost, to reestablish our downtown as a place for daily life. I think we've talked a lot, and I know you've talked a lot about property assessments and the density that we have seen downtown as a place for 9 to 5 office work. And with the shifting sands of remote and hybrid work, I think we understand that we need to kind of bring back where the downtown was this heart of commerce, but also place and community. If you hear me talk about this at length, I often point to Market Square as that place. And I know Rich is here from Rapid Transit, but trying to reestablish places like that as these places where the community gathered. One of my famous images, I have it in my office, is of Market Square in an early World Series game outside there, next to where your office used to be, Kathy. Individuals gathered to listen to the World Series, and they would put the scoreboard out like it was Fenway Park, right? Like the old time score for people to watch. Not sure we're going to do that, but we can put up a video board, right? And have people gather in Cornet Park to do those types of similar things and bring that sense of community in a place where city residents and regional residents alike want to come and be. That includes a more diverse business ecosystem, which we'll talk about supports for that, but it includes recruiting and trying to target recruitment for things like grocery stores and pharmacies, and what do we need to have in place in order to make that happen. The second is certainly to improve the perceptions and reality of safety and cleanliness. Certainly the perception survey showed that there are both real and perceived challenges and issues on that front. That involves everything from working with our friends at the city on identifying the challenges we might have with downtown lighting, which I think some folks think is like just replace the light bulb, but as Antonio and others can attest, every light pole has a story, right? And the complexities of a city that has grown over the years involves if it's owned by a utility, or if the actual junction box is owned by the city and then the light by something else. And we're working on ways that we can better map and understand and provide simple things like we think like lighting, and bring other areas of the city that we think are important, more visibility and cleanliness as well. If you remember when we made this initial announcement, we also announced support for Downtown Improvement District to reestablish and re-energize their downtown foot patrols as well. So those things are important, as well as working with the coalition of groups that support unhoused individuals downtown and seeking better collaboration and partnership with them now and forward as well. We also want to try to work with our friends at the city and the broader economic development community on providing better small business supports. I think you will see some of those announcements as we come forward in the plan development of their specific tools and resources that we can provide, whether it be loans and grants and different mechanisms to support a thriving small business ecosystem downtown as well. We've done some of this through kicking off my HBG mini grant program to allow businesses and community groups to participate in that. And I think we think that's a start of examples of how we can engage the small business community downtown. We also want to continue the momentum we see with events and also add on housing and other kind of coordinated partnerships as well. I think we know that office to residential conversions are going to be a foundational piece of a lot of this work, but those that have seen this work, every project is going to be different. Every capital stack is going to be different. The conversation around LERD is an important one because of those gaps that we see in the value of a property that is deemed an office versus that deemed as a resident. And the bank's looking at the same thing that you are, right? In terms of how do we get capital to these projects to make these conversions and provide energy through residents as well. We will identify some early demonstration projects in that area as well. We love the work that the city does through Arts Fest and various, if you've noticed throughout the summer, different events, will culminate certainly in Component. You can see a very demonstrable impact on foot traffic downtown utilizing a tool that we utilize to kind of mark data on those events and providing activity. Riverfront Concert Series being an example, building on those kind of momentum that we have with those institutions, the Whitaker Center, Capital City Music Hall, the Forum, and the such, and the various theater companies that we have, and to provide some coordinated partnerships around that, but also to lean into the work that ICA For Harrisburg is doing around the North Cultural District and highlighting those events as a way to generate energy and certainly income and revenue for our small businesses downtown as well. Finally, I don't think it should be a surprise. A lot of respondents identify parking as a challenge downtown. I'm not here in my brief time to provide necessarily an immediate solution, but to say that conversations continue with PEDFA, and certainly a lot of that lies within that partnership with PEDFA, the city, Tremont, Metropolis, and the such. I think our goal throughout this is to have reduce the friction, as the language that we've utilized, understanding that parking is both a perceived, but also can be a real barrier to folks. I was really pleased. Our friends at the county, set up to continue the 5 to 7 parking, continue to say happy hours should not be an issue. I understand some folks start at 4 o'clock, but 5 to 7 is free parking downtown. I think we'll identify there are other incentives that potentially could be utilized. All a question of resources and a very complicated structure in deal as well. As I sit here today, pen to paper, our fingers to keyboard are being done to help develop the draft of the plan with the goal of a September announcement as well. And that is taking all the public engagement that we have heard, but also conversations with stakeholders and individuals and focus groups, but also the integration of existing work that the city has already done and is underway, whether they be future and current traffic studies, work that the city has done already through the comprehensive plan and the integration of that within the conversations that have happened here to date. And also specific goals and objectives and implementation strategies for that work as well. What are our goals for increased housing? What are the goals for increased business starts, occupancy on first floor space, and kind of data baselines along with the perception baselines to move us forward as well. Again, I'm glad to answer questions, but I continue to say we're appreciative of this support because it allowed us to kind of hit the ground running. The only thing I leave is I know a lot of folks have circled the September announcement date as at the end, and certainly while no doubt it's the end of a planning stage, where work really begins in earnest on implementation as we go forward and what we think are some really significant opportunities and investments. But also what are the organizations that need to be empowered and lifted up to do some of this work? What does the city need in terms of infrastructure investment and support? What do our businesses need? What can we provide from the Creative and Chamber side as well? So we are working on all those things every day to try to deliver a great partnership plan that we have with the city, our state legislators, certainly the Commonwealth and the county as well.
Thank you. Do we have questions or comments?
Bring it.
I think I have one. I know that last time you were here, you talked a little bit about low hanging fruit and wanting to, once the plan is issued, wanting to have some things that can demonstrate success
Yeah.
in a shorter time frame.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the ideas that are being bandied about for that?
Sure. I think some of those things we're seeing already, again, deeply appreciative of the work that the city has done, in programming additional events. I think we've seen an uptick in certainly event programming as well. The Arts and Cultural District planning efforts, thanks to the support of the former Pennsylvania Council of the Arts, now called Creative Industries. Visit ICA Harrisburg has enlisted this support on how do we better lift up, market, identify public art and other things to delineate the importance of what we call the Arts and Cultural District, which stretches from the Susquehanna Art Museum all the way right down here to 3rd Street, and through the arts and the theater, the density of theaters and cultural and arts institutions that we have here within the city limits. And I think we will be shortly announcing some opportunities through a program through the DCED grant called MyHBG, which is an effort around tactical urbanism. And in the idea of businesses and community groups doing short-term activations on public art events. I don't want to steal the thunder of any of those announcements as we go forward, but they'll be coming forward shortly here. And it's only the first phase. We have some additional funds we think for hopefully we see some of these demonstrations. One of the examples, and again, the city worked with Capital Rebirth on these ideas of painting our utility boxes throughout Riverfront Park to try to bring forward and show that we have attention to detail in some of our public spaces. And I think some of those things you'll continue to see signage, wayfinding, things like that, as we kind of build around some of these bigger things like the signature investments around housing and those types of things.
All right, well, we will circle the date on our calendar.
Yeah.
As you say,
Okay.
look forward to it, and but more particularly look forward to working with you going forward on implementation and next steps. Thank you. Appreciate the update.
Okay, thanks.
All right, next we would like to invite up Rich Farr, who is the Executive Director of the Susquehanna Regional Transportation Authority, Rabbit.
We can shake it. And I like plenty.
So how many you need?
Thank you for the invite. I'm excited to be here, and always when there's a bit of a captive audience that I could speak about transit on, I'm here. So thank you for that. So public transportation, is about mobility, economic growth, and opportunity. We're supposed to be connecting people to jobs, healthcare, education, business, and right, that's what we're supposed to do. So the question that we're asking ourselves, and we've been on this journey now for about a year and a half, is how can mobility make our communities, or in this case, Harrisburg, stronger, right? So maybe a little bit about Rabbit Transit, who we are. We operate in 11 counties, well, actually 13. Cambria and Indiana County, we manage their non-medical emergency transportation, but provide public transportation in 11 down the Susquehanna. About 650 employees, 450 vehicles. So we're a decent sized organization. I say this because one of the benefits is that we can try things in different places, and there are some lessons learned of what works and what doesn't work. And so what makes a community or a city strong? And we think, you have to have opportunities so people can get to jobs. We have connections so neighborhoods are isolated. Choice, people should have the ability to choose. Do they want to drive? Do they want to take a bus? Do they want to walk? Maybe they want to take a bicycle, right? They should have different opportunities. And that requires investment in infrastructure to create that long-term value. And so so we talk about transit, and sometimes I don't think people think of transit as infrastructure as you would roads, sidewalks, utilities, parks. We are, and we should be treated that way. And so, looking at our transit system, and we've been doing a lot of work on this over the last couple of years, as I referenced. We're talking to our riders, and the things that they're struggling with is long wait times, long distances between bus stops and where their employment centers are, lots of transfers, limited hours. And I think those frustrations are real, but many of those problems aren't our problems. Those problems are land development problems, where people build things where it's a real challenge. We're talking about housing. It's very important that we look at housing sites. I'm hoping that we're looking that they're adjacent to a transit line. Don't build something and hope we come, because we don't have the resources to do that. And so how do we combine this all together and really have a transit planning, land use, and bring it all together so they're not thought of in two separate rooms? And I am going to get to what we're working on. I'm still just setting the stage because I think it's important people hear what we have to say. A good thing from a transit perspective is I think Harrisburg has great bones. We have walkable neighborhoods. There are sidewalks. There's some concentrated employment. We have state government, healthcare, universities, a great historic street grid. Right, that makes for good transit. And we have an okay existing network that I think we could build upon. So our new approach, and this is two-sided, so one with a map on it, what we are working on right now is what we're calling high-intensity mobility corridors. And so it would be built off our existing infrastructure where the routes are, but we're targeting these key routes. And what we're trying to do is make sure the infrastructure along the path is good. There are good sidewalks. They're the right number of bus stops, and the right bus stops with shelters, with benches that are clean and well maintained, right? Potentially signal light prioritization, where not preemption, but prioritization. So when the bus is coming, it sees it's coming on its screen, we're going to hold it so the bus can get through, because we want the bus to be faster where people don't want to ride it. So, they're the kind of things we're looking at as we move forward. We've identified some corridors. We've done this with many stakeholder meetings and public involvement. Lots of them have been at Strawberry Square, we've had municipal meetings, and so we built this playbook that sort of defines our goals. We've evaluated different approaches. What are the expectations to come out the other end? We've identified some corridors based on this larger group, and there are corridors in Harrisburg, West Shore, York. They're the three areas that we're looking at because we're more than one county. Lots of public engagement, as I referenced, and really the stakeholders help us identify which corridor should come first. So that's phase 1 and 2 done. We're moving into phase 3. Phase 3 is we're going to begin pricing what it's going to cost to look at these main corridors. There's a couple of them at different communities, and we'll have to determine resources versus which corridor actually gets developed based on what's available, right? But we need partners along the way. We want to make sure that if we're working on this corridor, if the city's building something, that there's development, PennDOT's doing something, like let's make sure we're putting all the resources together, and that's part of the plan. We'll do that. Really looking at those targeted improvements. And measure the results. What does it do ultimately to ridership? If you have a bus that comes once an hour, and I've watched, now I've been with Harrisburg Transit now for almost 8 years. It's hard to believe that we've been joined this long. But before I came, I watched Harrisburg Transit die by 1,000 cuts. This route lost frequency. This one was shortened because, well, they weren't being managed very well, and they were spending money in the wrong places. And I'd like to say for the last 4 years, we've reduced the hourly cost each year in this environment. It's pretty good, right? But we're in a position where we can begin regrouping and moving forward. And so, part of this, we want to, if you have a bus that only comes every hour or every half hour, is it really reliable? Is it something that people are going to want to use? Would you want to walk out your front door and get on a bus to go downtown for dinner, knowing that I gotta pay my bill because the bus is coming in 15 minutes, and if I miss that, I gotta wait another hour? That we can't have that on these corridors. So the idea with these corridors is really give frequency, maybe every 15 minutes, maybe every 10 minutes, depending on the time of day. We have to look at all those kind of things, but really give the resources, real-time bus information. And there's a little snippet of that if you've seen the train station shelters, like we have some real time. That's the kind of thing we're looking at, really creating nice spaces for people to be. So we need to pilot this, we need to measure it, we'll make adjustments, and then we can begin creating a playbook to begin doing this on other corridors. So this is something we hope to, within the next 2 years, we actually release bids for and start actually doing some real work along the corridors. So we're moving along. That's kind of where we are. But we can't do this alone. And we'll, as we begin developing those final plans, we'll be everywhere talking to anybody who will listen to us and who wants to help. Because I think that's the key, is if we can create frequency and reliability, we can build communities and get people walking on the street, because that's what we need, people on the street. So that's the high intensity mobility corridor, and a 30,000 foot. When I first was invited to come, I did prepare like a 32 slide deck, and then I saw I had 10 minutes. I'm like, ooh, okay, you get a handout front and back, and I'll talk really fast. So that's kind of what's happening in that space. Very excited about it. I think it's going to be good stuff. And we can ask questions at the end if you want. Let's flip it over. This is something we're also very proud of, creating our new future home. The Parks and Rec is the building that's on the bottom right, that if you drive by her street today, you're probably cursing because the traffic's very long, because they're putting the utilities in the street. So we're causing some mayhem in that area. But less than a year from now, this facility will be completed. That's phase 1. And that's the new Parks and Recs building. We need to take the other one down so we can build our facility. We're releasing bids in September, hopefully awarding in January, to begin the construction of the picture that you see on the top, front and center. You'll notice in the front along Cameron Street, it is a new transfer center. I know everyone loves the downtown transfer center, but not more than me. And I'm being sarcastic here. It is a terrible transfer center. It doesn't work. It doesn't function. If you're on a bus and you can't fit in the transfer center, you get to drive around the block until there's a slot for you to come in. Meanwhile, the bus you want is there and it left. And now I get to wait for an hour at the transfer center. It's wrong at every level. right? But there are some things we're gonna need along as we build this, one of the things that, and I'm, bending people's ears on, I need Market Street to be two-way. Right? I can't leave Market Square to get to the West Shore. If that doesn't get two-way, the Market Square will continue to be the West Shore transfer connection. I don't want that. I want it here. And when we do this, we can redesign the entire service to support the high intensity mobility corridors. And it kind of all fits together. At the same time, across the river, the Lemoyne Transfer Center is going to be going out to bid next year. And we're renovating that because it has 3 slots. We need 6. And so we're renovating that. We have 186 times a day we cross the river. I can give it 15-minute service and it's like 40 times a day. Every bus that leaves comes back across the river. It doesn't make sense. It's wasted resources. But I need all this infrastructure put together to make it all come together and work. And we're doing good things. We're moving, but the first thing are these pieces that we're working on and trying to put that puzzle together to create a better mobility network for tomorrow. So, any questions?
Yeah. Members?
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Very simple.
Okay.
So Rich, this picture, this rendering looks terrific. How do you think, I'm sure you've talked about this, how this is going to impact Cameron Street going forward? The area that you're in and the benefit it will have to that neighborhood.
I like to think we're gonna be this is gonna be a beautiful facility. I mean, and I hope we're the catalyst for continued redevelopment along that corridor. Like, that's what I'm really hoping for. I think it'll have a positive impact. Having the park nearby, having the bike lane on her street, kind of in the shadow of a community who's really transit dependent. It's a good place to put that. Those folks can come right down the road. We're right there. I think that makes it better for people to connect to work. We are thinking far ahead. Again, I could have 30 some slides. So we're partnered with Goodwill, and we are going to have a training center in this building for job training. And so we're going to partner with them so folks can come to the transfer center, walk out the door, go into a classroom and get support from Goodwill. So we're looking at how do we partner with other communities to extend that benefit even further. So always looking around the next corner to figure out what do we need to do and how can we be better. But I think it's going to be a great anchor for that
for that old Cameron.
Yeah.
Because obviously it needs some love.
It needs a little love. Our building that's 125 years old needs a lot of love.
Right across the street, CRW is doing the Paxton Creek restoration project, and so that.
I think it's really gonna come together nicely.
What is the impact? I'm sorry, I need to raise my hand. What is the impact of the traffic at Cameron and Maclay and Arsenal is hideous. What's it gonna do to your buses when they get out there? Do you get around it?
Oh, yeah. Well, we're gonna come out at Goodwill at the light.
Okay.
And so, and when they leave at the transfer center, if it works like it's supposed to, it's a pulse system. They'll all leave at the same time and all come back at the same time. So there'll be buses and then nothing for 15 minutes to 30 minutes and then buses and then.
Okay.
Right. And so we have the traffic impact studies show that there really isn't any impact. Because right now we're creating all kinds, because we're going out the back way, coming out on her. This will create a centralized location.
It's taking more the impact on you by the cars.
Yeah, we're gonna be fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Because we're maintaining that light.
Okay.
Yeah. And all the buses will go in and out of the same location.
Following up on that, you were talking about some technologies to help favor the buses a bit. And I know I was at a seminar a number of years ago in Pittsburgh where Penn Avenue, they were experimenting with that, Carnegie Mellon, and using sensors and a whole list of other things. So that's some of the kinds of things that you're.
Right. And the great news is most of the downtown traffic lights are already equipped for that.
Okay.
Right. It's just getting a transponder in the bus and recognizing that it's not emergency management.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you're not.
We're not asking for that, right? We don't get a green light.
Yeah.
It holds the green light or shortens the red light. We'll still be sitting at a red light, right? We're not asking for that. We just
Okay.
need to make it move faster.
So let me ask about usage patterns. So, okay, one of the things, and you heard it in an earlier report, the parking took a big hit because of COVID. And the hit related to the telework for state employees How did that affect your ridership
Yeah,
base?
we're at 70% of our ridership pre-COVID on the fixed route program here.
Okay.
Growing steadily, we measure like July to July.
Right,
And so we're increasing 3-4% every year. Sadly, the service that we have designed today is primarily to serve the state worker, not the resident.
right.
Right. So what we're doing here is we're going to redesign the service to service residents, locals who we, again, referencing, wouldn't it be great, walk out your door, catch a bus, come downtown for dinner and not have to worry about parking or driving. Now that probably takes away parking money, and I'm sorry. Right, we're always a bit conflicting there, but it's important for quality of life.
Well, you were actually anticipating my follow-up question, which was how you adapt to that changing marketplace. And I know a large part of your business is or has been from other cities into Harrisburg for state employees. So, yeah.
Yeah, we have lots of commuters coming in. Well, we have less commuters coming in than we used to, but we still bring those routes in.
And do you have relationships with the neighboring municipalities on park and ride zoning issues and?
Well, there's zoning issues, right? It's land development issues, right? And not so much here, honestly, we do pretty good at Dauphin County. It's across the river with the never-ending growth of lots. Right, and wanting us to connect to them. Like, could you put it further away? You know, they're all the way down to Chambersburg. we're not going to Chambersburg. I don't have those resources. But they need employees, right? And we supply a lot of employees in Dauphin County to Corolla County.
Two questions.
Yes.
Have you coordinated at all with train service?
Yes. So the commuter routes come in and it's coordinated with the train. So folks, and we do have folks who come through here to get to Gettysburg, believe it or not. A lot of tourists come in on the train, take the express bus to Gettysburg. So there's that connection between that. The airport is an area that's hard because the airlines come and go and they come in with new schedules all the time. So we build a schedule that meets the current sort of flight pattern and then they change it and they never call us. Like they don't care what we have. And so it's a constant struggle with that. Now for employees, we take a lot of employees there to the airport. That's pretty regular. So that works, but making that connection to get to a flight is, if we had every 15-minute service, we would have to worry about that. But when you arrive once an hour, it's hard. Yeah.
And secondly, you mentioned partnerships. Have you considered any partnership with Recycle Bicycle?
I know, I can't say we have a partnership with them, but I know that we have partnerships with folks who rehab bikes and give them back to community members who are in need. They leave bikes behind on the buses all the time. We have, I don't know, probably 23,000 boardings a year with bicycles. And oftentimes they leave them behind. And so if they're not claimed in a couple months, we turn them in and they rehab them and give them back out.
And that's the sort of thing that Recycle Bicycle.
Yes, so that we probably do have a relationship with them. I know I don't know who they are, but it's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was also thinking you've clearly got a lot of mechanics available.
Yeah, they're not working on bicycles. They gotta fix the buses. Yeah,
If you're doing training programs as well, that might be something that.
well, right, and that might be a goodwill partnership.
Yeah.
Right, how do people learn that skill set?
Yeah. I live downtown, and that's kind of an observational thing, that there are a lot more people commuting non-automobile, whether it's bus or what, but now scooters, e-bikes and.
And all of those are potential transit riders. Right,
I'd like you to get him on transit. I mean, I'm like,
well, they can't bring their.
go out in the park one day and then those in place.
Yeah, the challenge we have is by regulation, they can't bring on the no gas, anything, and the
Lithium batteries.
the lithium batteries, thank you, are a problem.
And we just want them to give up the e-bikes.
Yes.
I'm good with that too, right? But every trip,
is put them back in the street. I mean, Brian knows them in the sidewalk.
it's a good fight you'll have to fight, that's outside my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
But every trip starts on foot.
Yeah.
Whether you're riding in a car or, right, and so anytime I can intercept that traffic on foot, I'm there, so.
Thank you, and I know you're connected with the
Yeah, Ryan hears a lot from me.
Yeah, yeah.
I think,
Probably too much.
I think it should be pointed out that part of the plan that we heard about Market Square, and what's gonna happen eventually, but part of that is moving out your site out of Market Square. There's a method to the madness, which is that once you're not there, that frees space for the ability to do more things in Market Square.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win, right?
My feelings are hurt at all. Like, I need, it doesn't.
Get the buses out of there, other than if you're driving through the square, get the transfer station out of Market Square.
Right.
And turn that into this, back to this, the heart and soul of the city, which is what it always was.
Rather bus is the heart.
The circulation system, that's not.
Well, yeah, 100% on board. All right, well, thank you for having
Very
me
much.
anytime.
Appreciate it.
You know, maybe come back in the future as we begin closer to rolling out some of this stuff so you can hear what we're doing.
Yes.
All right,
Look forward to it.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is a discussion of the city's financial status, and we have two items here, the update on budget preparation and then 5-year financial. I don't know which order you want to go, because that's a kind of sequential thing.
Yeah.
But this is the time of year when we are obliged to complete the update for the 5-year financial plan. And so essentially it is an update of the plan that's been in place for a bit. And so we're adding a year out and then updating all the numbers in between. And then this is the usual cycle time for budget preparation. So where would you like to head?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I'll wing it a little bit on budget preparation. Because it is key to the work I've done for the 5-year plan. And right now, I know there's been extensive time put in by our budget staff, our available budget staff. And also there's the consulting firm that's in, Keystone Municipal Solutions is in. But Marie is in attendance today, so I appreciate her attendance and also the work she's been putting in with Alex relative to budget. They've been meeting with departments and directors, getting a feel for what the needs are. I've been really focused on revenue. I've been hitting that hard. And in a way, it's the time of the year, it's a little bit past. Normally the mid-year report is done and is given to city council right when they come back, which was actually last night from their hiatus. And we've prepared, I was anticipating maybe getting on the agenda for last night, but the city clerk said no, they've already lined us up for the first legislative session, I believe in September. So given that, because the mid-year's always been a June 30 presentation, which is fine, but so much time has passed and we have actuals through July. So I thought, well, here's an opportunity to bring that forward. It's a mid-year in the sense with an extra bonus month, if you will. And it also relates to this project of building the 5-year plan with the needed update. So that's the, targeting that. Now that I feel comfortable based on, I said revenue, but I've also done a projection of expenses, for both key funds, the general fund and neighborhood services. So that's on the horizon to get that introduced to city council, their next legislative session.
Good.
Okay. All right.
Brian,
Yes.
I know you do this for city council, but it's important, and we talked about this last meeting, right? The timeliness of this mid-year report. And just an aside, Brian and I talked about this yesterday, so I'm not sandbagging. But I think it would be helpful to get it out earlier, and also, I know you don't have anybody to do it. So we talked with Karen yesterday, and the controller's office is willing to try and put it out prior to the end of July, just as a document. Just so you can get some sense of where we are. The earlier we can get, that mid-year report done, the quicker you all, the mayor and the city council can respond to issues that we find. The more that gets compressed, the less ability you have to react to it. So I just thought it would be useful. Karen said she'd do it. Brian thinks it's okay, so I think that's what we're gonna try, and Karen is gonna do that in the future, so we get maybe the middle of June, middle of July, we can have it. It's not gonna be as comprehensive as what finance can do, because they're not gonna be a crystal ball as well. But at least a straight line projection and some trends and get some notion of oil okay or not. Because if you're running out of money and you find out in November, I'd rather know in July, I can do something about it. Anyway, that's what I did.
All right, yeah, I appreciate that meeting yesterday with you and Karen too. And also I'd be remiss if I also want to recognize Antonio, because he's of course the city's new BA, and he's stepping in to monitor our progress for budget, leading up to the November presentation from council. So he's been driving that train quite a bit. So what the handouts that I distributed, the top page is probably, this is just an excerpt from what will be ultimately in the 5-year document, and it's still in draft form. Still needs some tweaking, some fine tuning, and I know the timing of it is coming up due with next Monday's due date, so I'm probably going to be working on it, through that day. But to get it out before that day ends to this board and to Jeff, and then the timing of it is to have it reviewed and timely by the board, and also involves the controller's office for their level of comfort. This presentation is one of the most important pages. It's the general fund, and I'm sorry about the years didn't they're a bit dark, but it starts 2025 and goes all the way to 2030. 2025, of course, has actuals, then the rest are forecast amounts. One thing I want to point out too, that like 2026, is an extraordinary year. City certainly doesn't do every year over $100 million in both revenue and expenses. A lot of that is driven by, as I mentioned, extraordinary items that have. One of the biggest ones, as you know, is the Broad Street Market restoration project. But based on actuals and from what I'm seeing as projections for the year, we will have a net revenue of about $1 million revenue over expense. And when speaking of revenue, when you factor out really the extraordinary amounts that the city realizes that are not the typical amounts, it tends to be around like what I have here for 2027 as that projection, which is 78.4 million. That's more typical, more consistent of our recurring revenue items. Our revenue in 2026 includes the insurance proceeds for Broad Street Market. It includes an additional 7 million just because of timing that the city gets for capital fire protection. Because the budget impasse last year, we didn't get that first 7 million until January of the current year. So we're on track to get another 7 million, which is the normal allocation timing in September of this year. But it's certainly not 14 million every year. It's right now it's set up for 7 million. And then the other big revenue ticket item is the RACP grant award that relates to the FMD field project. That project is essentially done, and the general fund has been utilized to pay all the expenses, for that upgrade. And we are in the process right now of submitting, gathering all of our ducks together, and we're pretty well ahead. I think we're getting very close to where we can submit what the Office of the Budget expects on the detail side. But that's iffy as far as I'm confident it will happen. It's just timing. It may not happen by December of this year. It may be January, February of next year. But it's $6 million, and I think it's something we can bank on. It's just a matter of how it plays out timing wise. So given that 78.4 million, I'm using that as a guide, which and I've mentioned this to the mayor and to our business administrator about that. That really is the look to as far as building a responsible budget. And it gets tough next year still because of Broad Street Market. We're anticipating about $8 million of encumbrance to be there at the end of this year, which will roll over into next year. So that has to be considered, for our capital lines, for our budget next year. And I'm showing in 2027, because of that, there is a draw on fund balance of 6.4 million. And again, this is, of course, these numbers aren't in stone, and this is a draft, and this is tentative, but it's just an outlook of what could happen here. When you use fund balance, there is a comfort range of what's acceptable as far as, utilizing it for debt and for capital, something, a major capital project or for infrastructure. You can get a reasonable justification for using fund balance. Now, the good news of this, with 2027 taking a hit like that in fund balance, bringing our cash down to about 9 million, the following year, there is another RACP award that has been announced by the Office of the Budget, and it includes, it's 2.75 million. And 2.25 of that is Broad Street Market, 500,000 relates to the city government center. So that's why you see in 2028 an increase of revenue up to 81.6 million. So there's a recovery there. In other words, we go up to 12, almost 13 million by the end of 2028 in cash. So that's sort of a leveling out, if you will. And I know I'm not kidding myself. When you get beyond next year, you start projecting years out. It's it's a hit or miss type thing. But it's the best estimation that I've been able to come up with right now. And then things tend to level off where there's a more favorable results. Revenue versus expenses over future years. I'll stop right there on this schedule.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Quick question, Brian. The projects we've discussed, they're not all in the general fund, but that somehow they affect the general fund because there'll be transfers out and grants back in. So money's passing through the general fund, even though obviously the FNB Bank Stadium project doesn't live in the general fund.
Right.
Broad Street Market, I'm not sure if that's the general fund or capital fund or.
It's all general fund. Well, technically, it's 99% of it is all general fund. One of our, we have two funds that are contributing smaller amounts. The host fund has $500,000 encumbered for that. And then also last year, the capital projects fund, we did transfer funds over of about $650,000 from capital projects to the general fund as related support.
I mean, it's
Right.
it's a little
Right.
it's a little too late. But maybe in
Right.
hindsight, we probably should have put the Broad Street Market not entirely sitting in the general fund because it does go.
The track
It
is
skews it, which is what you're showing in this data. It skews it
correct.
negatively and then it skews it back positively to balance out, but it does show a skewing of the general fund over time, but it's unfortunate, that's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So we'll live with that. All right. And then also the other improvements, things like the government center improvements, are those passing? I know you use the special revenue fund for state money.
Or the grants fund.
The grants fund.
Right. I mean, that could very well be, but because what you just said about Broad Street, because it's all been solely contained essentially in the general fund, I felt like it was just to see this through. Again, it's projected, it's projected sometime around this time next year, hopefully for that project to be done. And then, of course, I mentioned the RACP that's related. It helps counter what the burden is for 2027.
At least there is practice.
The problem I see with that is, that it puts a burden on the general fund for a capital expense.
Right.
A large one. Yeah. And it seems to me that it wouldn't be, and I'm on the record with everybody who knows me, how I feel about going into debt. I don't like it, I hate it. but sometimes it's necessary. And I know that the insurance settlement is coming up short of what we think the final cost is gonna be of the project. And I think you told me it was around eight or $9 million that we're gonna be short.
Well, there is they've confirmed a pending settlement is around 5.6 million as a final payment. The overall total has been, it has been established. It's 13.75 million the city gets, which covers multiple years because we've actually received insurance money starting in 2024. But that's right. There's
Is that the insurance is not, because of the way that thing has evolved. And sort of turned back into a real project as opposed, it seems to me, from my perch, I'm not in it like you are. But it's no longer rebuilding the old market, it's rebuilding the new market. And with some, a subsequent increased cost in doing that. So it's not coming, the insurance isn't going to cover the repairs. And I don't see how the general fund can be expected to finance that kind of capital. So all I'm saying is maybe you guys could consider putting a proposal together for city council. Something short term like that, we wouldn't even have, I don't think we have to go to the market, do you? I mean, probably just.
So we have no credit rating at the moment,
So
so.
we always get credit with no rating. And this would be a good way to get one. I mean, we borrowed money to put the new street lights in.
We did.
And, if you can show, it's some kind of self, and we're not gonna use
Well-
the word self-liquidating in this city anymore, but something like that. That there's some way that you can tap into it.
I will jump, Charlie, I will jump on your bandwagon.
All right.
One of the things that we heard today is that there is a high likelihood that there'll be some state money in the future for the Broad Street market. Did I get that correct? That to close that gap between insurance and costs. And you have a figure actually now, what that would be.
of 2.25 million is what I'm aware of.
So
You know.
what you can do is in essence, you don't have to wait for the $2.25 million check to come. Because we know that day when that check comes will be very far in the future. It'll come, but it's not today.
I think it's gonna be a bigger shortfall, isn't it? I mean,
But that's what you're getting, it's guaranteed that you're getting a payment of 2.25. You could go out tomorrow and borrow the 2.25
yeah.
against the award. And then you have the cash in hand, and then you could repay it when you get the RACP check in 2027 or whenever that check arrives. In other words, you may turn that grant award into a cash advance so that the city doesn't have to lay it out of the fund balance. Sort of using your idea so that it moderates the use of fund balance. But you're going to get at least 2.25.
And also,
You could go borrow it tomorrow.
if you could take it, depending on what the number is. And you know how these things are even now, how solid that number is. I'm not sure it's as solid as we'd like it to be. But there has to be some way to protect the general fund from a huge capital expenditure that they have to go at someplace.
It's a policy decision of the city, but those are some
I
ideas.
don't know the presentation for do you think philosophy, it should be,
Leave it up to them, option.
it should be okay to borrow, it's probably only needs to be a 3-year term or something like
Well,
that.
that's what I said, it's a short term, it's sort of like a bridge.
Yeah.
Bridge fund.
That's all. I appreciate that. And I just don't know, though, I keep coming back to where we still are in Act 47 distress status. And I think there is a prohibition against borrowing.
Well, we did
but-
borrow the money for those streetlights. I know that because.
Yeah.
So now there's a way to borrow money when
Right.
you want to borrow money. I'm just saying, it always is.
It doesn't have to be the
Yeah.
city also, somebody could
No,
step up for it
I know you mentioned that
on behalf of finance.
This is where I like to defer to the law bureau.
Absolutely, we literally just
Right.
hypothesize. These are-
Nothing's real till there's a meeting.
Yeah.
Please, we interrupted you. Brian.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Tangent.
Brian,
Yeah, right.
things if I may, the revenue estimates that you had in here are based on current tax levels.
Yes, like real estate,
Yeah.
EIT, LST, correct.
There's no increases in here.
Very small. I mean, I think I should.
Change in rate, I think is her question.
Yeah,
Changing rates.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, as far as like, for example, real estate taxes, no tax increase. Built
It's built in.
built for this.
Okay.
Correct.
and then, you know, I've been harping for quite some time on the OPEB benefits. Show me where they come out of.
That would be, yes, it would be in the expense line, but there's a separate schedule. It's part of a 5-year document that goes to just that.
Okay, so,
And
but ultimately it's out of the,
it would be expenses before capital. The second line,
second one.
right?
We do require, the city has provided, Kathy, every 5-year plan has an OPEB payment schedule, so we can see how they're doing on meeting their requirements. And even though they don't have a trust, we are watching that annual distribution of money for OPEB requirements. And it'll be in the final report.
And is that static? Is that increasing? Is that
I think
decreasing?
that should be.
It's the liability is coming down. I mean, it's still huge. It's over $100 million in total. But that's not what the city pays, of course, every year. It's right. And I think that's what you're wondering, how much do we pay in medical claims, I think.
I was literally wondering where it showed,
It's-
so I could look further into that.
It's meaningless just to say, it's in that line, that second line, but there's a breakdown and where the city has. That line represents like personnel, services, supplies. It's in our personnel grouping of accounts. That's where it would be.
Thank you.
I'll draw your attention to it when we get the full report at the end of the month. Absolutely.
The liability is going down because the collective bargaining agreements,
Stopped requiring payment of some.
well, the benefit's no longer available to
Right.
employees hired after a certain date.
Right.
So we're
Yeah.
aging out of it, you might say.
Yes, yeah.
Going in the right direction, still right, yeah.
It's going in the right direction, but that's a lot of money
Yeah.
to saddle future taxpayers with. Without any benefit that they are seeing.
It is, it's tough. It's a tough liability that the city is committed to years ago.
Right, so just moving on to the second page of the handout, it's a single page, portrait. It's just a summary, of both funds for general fund and neighborhood services, just showing the cash position anticipated by the end of the year. We're at 15.3 million in the general fund and 5.4 in neighborhood services. There's a back off there of encumbrances to get it down to what budgetary fund balance would be based on those numbers. And I show what we anticipate still being encumbered at the end of this year for Broad Street Market, which is just about $8 million.
That's what I was talking.
Yeah.
That's coming out of cash. And it really isn't cash, it is cash anyway. But you could look at that a different way. Because $2.8 million is, we're getting close. And
Right, well, right, as far as
running
backing off, right, but
which I always worry about. I don't
Right.
care about all kinds of balances and stuff, but cash goes away. Got trouble.
But to me, the thing is there, that has to be a budget item for next year's budget. So if we're building an 80. If we're building an, it's gonna take away $8 million that could be spent on something else.
Exactly.
That's, I'm not ignoring that. I'm not saying, oh, encumbrances are just gonna be what they are. It's got to be at that material level. It's gotta be worked into next year's proposed budget.
It does.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how to deal with that.
Right. Right.
And you can deal with that a number of different ways, but certainly have to account. Yeah,
Right, okay.
anyway, you'll figure it out.
Oh, yeah. Just not there yet. Yeah. And the third handout is a landscape report on the general fund. It's 2 pages and it's just showing the top half is revenue based on the city's major revenue categories. And again, it's a mid-year type, look. It shows the actuals in the middle column, and then to the left is what the current budget is, the revenue budget for the general fund, and then the projection on the far right. And down below the second half, and what leads on to the second page are the expense numbers, and that's broken down by like our budget units throughout the general fund. And again, it's the same approach. Looking at actuals through July, coming up with a projection, and then the current budget is there. What's interesting about this page, if you go to the second page of that schedule, you're going to see the current budget column has 113 million versus our actuals of projected for 102. So again, why is that such a drop in the projection? And primarily, again, it's Broad Street Market, because when it comes to budget, we have to budget for the full encumbrance amount for the year. So it's based on the encumbrances that are going to be moving again, from this year into next year by the end of the year. That $8 million I referenced earlier. So that projection for 2026 is cash expenses, but there's still the $8 million to go that will roll over into 2027. I have one more scheduled. Any questions or comments on anything so far? And the last handout is the other significant fund of the city, which is the Neighborhood Services Fund. And these aren't meant to be construed as the 5-year plan pages or document. These are just working schedules I'm currently working on to get to that point. But I thought I would show this because, again, the Neighborhood Services Fund it's critical fund for public works, and the revenue, of course, driving that fund is the city's trash, refuse and disposal collections. And we're projecting revenues for this year to be 21.9 million, which is pretty comparable to what we have in budget, 22 million. So that's a nice comparison. Our expenses for the year, the total projection is not quite 21.6, and the budget we currently have on the books is 23.2. So again, the projection is lower than budget because there is some estimated savings we expect in that fund in personnel and service costs. That fund includes the main budget unit in that fund is the city services public works piece. There's the parks maintenance component of that fund, and then the 3 boroughs that the city provides trash services to, namely Steelton, Pembroke, and Paxtang. What needs to be done is there is a concern here though, because what's included in revenue, there's quite a bit of interfund support that comes from various funds, including the general fund, to keep pace with the expenses in this fund. And it's really around $3 million, give or take. And that's what's driving this fund. But it's, again, something that can't continue. That interfund support can't last throughout future years. So I think the time is coming to take, and this is what we're doing. We're taking a harder look at the expenses in this fund on both the public works side and the parks maintenance side. So that will need to be addressed more critically, I think, this time for the proposed budget.
These two things got put together under, for example, put these two kind of I never could understand why they did it. And do you think it still makes sense? Should they take it apart? I mean, it doesn't, I just don't get it. And so you can't really figure out what, I mean, from our perspective, maybe again, in an operational perspective, I can't see who's what in this stuff. Is it parks or is it public works? And they're two very different things.
Yes.
I don't like to think about not having parks, but I still want my trash man. So it's and so they're all blended together. It's hard to figure out what's what anyway. I mean, a suggestion for you to take back hours.
Yeah.
Marita, as to see if it makes sense to try and take this fund apart.
Actually, it might be good to invite Marita and Antonio and welcome up to the table if you want to
You want.
join in. Like, and the reason I'm doing, part of the reason I'm doing that is we did have a little bit of this discussion as well in the meeting that I reported on for Monday.
Oh, okay.
And,
Let me see, it's simple.
Take your candle.
plus I have a hunch, but I'll circle back to the discussion on the 5-year plan. We'll have some other pointed questions as well, so. Thank you. All right. So. Okay, so on, go ahead.
So, okay, so, but I get what you're saying, Charlie, about, neighborhood services, right? It's public works, but yet we have parks maintenance in there, and that was developed from that administration. So obviously, I mean, parks maintenance is round about, say, $2 million of that fund. So if you take that away temporarily, you can see what it does. It makes that fund more sustainable and more in line. It would almost be behaving like the old sanitation fund,
Exactly.
right?
And if you think about it, the contribution, if the sanitation fund can hold its own without a contribution from the general fund,
Right.
then the parks maintenance part is more appropriate out of the general. So instead of looking at that support, the support coming from the general fund to the neighborhood services fund, why don't you put the service where it belongs? Anyway,
So that's 2 million, that's 2 million more dollars, right, to get into the general fund. That's the rub there. And that's the challenge, based on what, right.
It's not change, it's gonna be a challenge on one side or the other,
Yeah.
It's still the same number when you add it all up. So anyway, I can.
But you're right, it could be prioritized that way and to say, well, we need to make an effort to make that a priority. To take, because again, this burden on neighborhood services, the fund has been living around like consistently around $5 million at the end of the year, in fund balance. And I think it's getting close though to the point that becomes for future years, even as close as next year, that might not be, if we have to use too much of that fund balance to bridge the gap. So that's my concern about
And
that.
the thing is that when you're looking at the decision makers, the city council especially, trying to decide what's what, when you put them together like that, it seems to me to be very difficult to figure out. I'm trying to pick up the trash and mow the grass, and they're two very different things. And I don't know what to do, of course, about throwing bombs and leaving, but.
Parking money would be a great solution if it were.
You had $2 million.
That's $2 million right there.
Yeah.
But, oh well, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with all the concerns brought up, right? Like, I think this is something I've had conversations with the mayor and the council about this, and I've had conversations with the directors, of Public Works and people involved in parks, just trying to figure out, okay, if we have all these services, like Public Works should be relatively self-sustaining with what's in the neighborhood services fund, and what we bring into trash collection. So we can't survive on that fund if we're not making, if it's not driving itself, at least, if we have to continually support the general fund, as you've seen, there's already a lot of other things the general fund has to pick up, so we can't keep relying on that. So it's a conversation we're looking at. I think there's a lot of different options on the table, the parks, moving it out of the neighborhood services fund is certainly one of those options. I think we have some other creative options in what we can do with looking at the structures of Public Works right now and seeing what can also be moved out of that fund and into other funds. But at the end of the day, like Brian said, I mean, the struggle is always gonna be, we move from one fund to another, the overall revenue, when you look at all the funds together, is still, a struggle at the end of the day. We have to figure out what is realistic and what's not. So that's, and with the Broad Street market, that's always gonna be an issue next year. But once we're past the Broad Street market, it starts to get a little bit easier. assuming nothing else comes up.
It violates the principles of general organizational theory to have these two very different things, same fund, and then you can't get your, you say, well, I definitely want to make sure I'm picking up the trash. What's the impact of that on the parks? I can't tell. But if you took them, put them, separated them, then you know, this is what I need to pick up the trash, and this is what I need on the parks, and you don't get. And that's something I get cool on these days.
I think since we've been able to extend our trash collection to the surrounding boroughs, that neighborhood services fund is looking more and more like an ordinary enterprise
Yeah.
fund, a proprietary fund. And in that case, then only the proprietary fund functions such as sanitation or public works related activities really fit best. I'm just talking pure accounting. I'm not talking policy because you know, I'm far from being able to promote particular policies without my colleagues guiding me, but from an enterprise fund standpoint, it makes some sense to strictly provide the related services as it relates to the income that's coming in.
Well, and it always.
Which is what you're saying.
It's always had been that way, you know, these prior years, it was always that way until Mayor Capital put it together, and I don't think, what are we doing this for? And now it just confuses me even more. But anyway, it's just, I'm done. Talking about it, you know what to do. You're like Ryan, you're smart people.
Not as smart.
Right?
I said not as smart. He's the brains of the outfit. All due respect to him.
Yeah.
He's the overall brains, he's the finance brain.
I picked up Rita.
I appreciate the overrating. It's, I do. Yeah.
Not at all.
That concludes the presentation on my end.
Unless you have any other questions.
Well, we do need to have a discussion on where we are and what our timeline is for the update to the 5-year plan. And we are on a deadline. We have, thank you for first blush of 5-year projections by broad fund category, but obviously there's narrative and supporting documentation that has to come in as part of that. And, you know, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of other questions yet. We're looking at.
So that if, assuming that Brian is able to get us the document by the close of business on the 31st of August, which is his goal.
Yes.
Yes, we're working.
Yes, this Monday, yes.
That gives this board 10 business days to give some kind of response. It doesn't have to be a final response, sort of comments on the document. In the past years, there's always been some offline back and forth amongst the board and myself.
Okay, let me clarify that.
Yes, please.
Online communications individually.
Yeah, I am not.
We are not holding an online meeting.
With me, as you give your feedback on Brian's document to me as your manager, and I collate those comments. And in previous years, that collation has resulted sometimes in Brian or Marita before Brian having to take a second run at maybe updating certain things in the document, which by the way is fine. Then when we come together at our next public meeting, which is scheduled for September 23rd, so we'll get it right. By that night, the goal is to be able to approve or to endorse the plan, the final plan as has been submitted by the city. So it's allowed to go through some editing between the 31st and the 23rd.
Right.
Did I do a good job?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. That was thorough and concise. So 2 benchmarks. So among other things that we're going to be interested in seeing in the narrative, you know, there's a list of fiscal pressures, obviously, that, you know, we've talked about enough. We acknowledge that, I know you've mentioned in our meeting on Monday that these projections take into account, for example, the 3-year escalation under the FOP contract, that we are taking into account changes in assessed value based on all of the appeals. for better or worse, where we think parking might run. And then I think probably some optimistic outlook on what we're going to see yielded from revitalization and from business licensing. I know we talked briefly about number of new license applications that are coming in and so on. So a lot of that works into a longer term multi-year projection. But we are going to want to take a closer look on how the narrative plays that out and how some of the supporting charts and documentations play into that as well.
We've updated a good bit of the plan already. I mean, many of the supporting schedules, like Kathy mentioned OPEB, there's a pension section, and then of course there are other funds that appear in that. They're not nearly as material and not as overall concerning, but they're included in that document as well. But to me, the challenge really was where I feel a comfort level is, again, these projections for both revenue and expense on both funds, that was key. I wanted to at least be at that point today, because that'll drive, of course, the future years. And also what's helpful is we just went through not too long ago the Section 203 annual report to the Commonwealth. And there's a lot of relevant, fresh still information in that can be rolled right into this update. So that is helpful.
And then, of course, just so everybody understands, assuming that by the 23rd of next month, there is a final report, and everybody's on the same page, that works right into the 2027 budget. Because it's some of the same numbers that are produced in the 5-year plan or then in the budget document, which comes out soon thereafter.
Part of the reason that a number of years ago we
shifted the dates, so that just
so
one thing rolls into the next, and it just becomes an ongoing process. Where you're just going from one document to.
And a consistency process.
Oh, yeah.
Because you want to align a lot better now that you have more information.
Sure.
And you have July's data and not just May or June's.
Right.
Excuse my interruption.
No, that's fine, that's perfect. And obviously, staff is preparing, as you talked about, you're already into the 27 budget preparation process. But by the time we're done with the 5-year plan, there will be, in essence, a draft 27 budget to review. And then we review that also as part of the city council's review.
And the controller.
And the control, does both.
Okay.
Control is very busy.
Mr. Chairman, I think all of the budget stuff is wonderful and obviously needs to be done very thoroughly. I also am looking at the practicality of some of this. And it seems to me that a budget, even if it's the best and most precise budget in the world, is only as good as the administration of the budget is. I don't want to divert this meeting, but I'd love it if at some point in the future, the business administrator could fill us in more on what steps, what measures are being taken internally to make sure that folks understand that if the budget is X, they really need to be spending according to X. And if they want to go to Y, that they're going to need special approvals to that. I mean, the one thing that stood out to me a few seasons back was, and it may have wound up being a very good thing, but a lot of extra money was spent for summer help, which was helpful to the people that were employed for that summer. Most of them were youths, as I understand it, but it played havoc with that budget amount. So I'd like to know more about the measurements that are in place, because otherwise we're never going to get out of this financial mess. So if we could put that on the agenda for a future meeting when we're not as crunched on time as we are now, I think that'd be great. And also, it's not fair to spring it on you, just.
No, I'd be happy to put together a presentation and run through everything.
Thank you.
Great.
I have to say though, Kathy, looking at these numbers now versus the numbers that I was looking at, I think the mess doesn't look nearly as bad.
Well,
I mean,
may it be so.
yes, but you need to stay on it.
Yes.
Not into that mess,
Yes.
because people aren't doing the things that you said to do.
Exactly.
Well,
And
But at least we have, that's the thing I keep saying, we have got all this room to make corrections. If we stay on it, don't
amen,
get caught,
amen.
surprised. So that's why I think all these different various reports, the ones you speak of, and other people that try and give you some sense of where we are versus the budget. Budget is always a king. And I think it's right. What are you doing to enforce that budget?
Because otherwise, everything that Brian's doing, everything that you're doing is for naught. So,
Might as well be the federal government if you're
but I mean, to hear that you believe it doesn't.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes, other questions or comments? Anything that you need to add, elaborate on? Good, thank you. All right, we appreciate that, and there's no action needs to be taken, but as indicated, we will be getting draft materials for the board to review and get comments back to Jeffrey, who then will amalgamate and
Great recommendations.
right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. All right,
Okay, just have a couple of housekeeping items, since we approach the end of the meeting. You all received a copy of the Bill's aid report, which feels pretty good. Want to thank Michael, as usual, who's helping me obtain some of our money from the Department of Community and Economic Development. Thank you, I appreciate it. As you can see, our accounts are starting to need replenishment. I have no doubt that Margaret Clay, who's not with us today, but she's right on it, I'm sure, and we'll have our additional state funding soon if we need. So that is noted as well, but that's also on financial stuff.
okay. Update on appointments, we already did, and that we can strike that from future agendas. Thank you very much. Yeah,
Anyway,
and any other business from the members? Okay, public comment then?
excuse me, we have a number of people in the audience. Doctor, would you like to say something?
Yeah, but
I'm just happy to be here and be a part of the conversation and, part of the school district. We want to continue to be engaged.
Thank
And
you.
so being invited to those meetings is important for us to hear all this conversation so we could making sure we're making the right decision as we continue to support the city and everything else.
Thank you, and I do appreciate the conversation we had yesterday as well, and I didn't have an opportunity, it wasn't appropriate in my report, but if you have anything from the learned discussion that you'd like to elaborate on or correct or expand on?
Our position, and I think from our position is we want to, again, come to the table and get this going. We want to sign off on this as soon as possible, so we can kind of make sure this agreement is something that works for the district as well as all the other entities.
Great. Thanks very much. We really appreciate it.
I think you have a question.
Just very, very technical. At the end, it says the next meeting.
Yeah, you got that wrong. We'll correct that. as our last.
That's all.
So do you have any questions?
Yeah.
Brian, do you have questions?
I have a few things, on the Broad Street one, between the exact that versus insurance payouts versus.
I think we're only at an estimate at this point at the cost of the project, given how much next door is taking. Total cost.
What I can quote you, like overall, we estimate the total project cost to be at least 23.2 million.
That's the project.
So of that total, right, which that also includes like costs related to the temporary site where the tent is.
Right, you net it out for insurance.
But then those insurance proceeds are still in negotiations. I don't want to speak.
Well, they are, that is settled, like the final amount overall is 13,750,000. So there's like let's say a $10 million difference, right? That's not all. It's a combination. I mean, a good bit of it is general fund, but as I mentioned, there are a couple other funds that are contributing. There's also, last year, there was CDBG funding that was approved, $1 million for the benefit of applying it to the architect fees. So it's,
It won't.
it's a combination, right, right. And if, I mentioned the rack fee, which isn't anytime soon, but that's something to think about as far as,
That's not required.
yeah, yeah.
So I mean, that's the gap that's being filled through other things, including Cameron.
Brian, is it fair to say that what we're talking about with the market now is an upgraded market? It is not a replacement of what burned down.
It's an enhancement.
Enhancement.
It's an enhanced facility, so it's just a.
Yeah, the part of the issue is when you talk about direct replacement. The direct replacement now means also bringing it up to code. And then also adding HVAC systems and sprinkler systems and a handful of other things. So that's not an easy, that was part of the discussions with the insurance is, okay, which of that actually gets covered? Because that has to be part of the replacement value.
Enhancement is a good word.
Yeah, that's right, please.
Eric had comments.
Yes.
I can read them out.
If you just give them to me afterwards, I'll be happy to answer.
Yeah, I'll just hand them over.
Yeah, no problem, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Is that for Dr. Does anybody have any other questions or comments? If not, back to you. Chairman for correction of our date.
All right, yes, the agenda said we're gonna meet again today, but our actual next meeting is, right. Our actual next meeting is September 23rd. So, thank you. So with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, and all those in favor, aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all very much.
4:33 p.m.
Yeah.